Well, coming at you live. I love to start the show by just telling people that we're live so they don't think it's recorded. My name is John Todora, and again, we are live, coming to you live on Facebook, on YouTube. And for those of you that are probably listening, you're maybe one of the thousands of people who download this show across many different podcast platforms. Thank you very much for tuning in. It's the What's on Sports podcast, of course, brought to you by our parent company, which is whatsonsports.com, and by our sponsor, Sports Trading Systems. If you want to learn how to trade sports like other people trade stocks, you can do that by going over to sportstradingsystems.com. And by the way, I'll be telling you a lot more about that as the show goes on. We've got a huge show today. We just came off of a great weekend of football. I mean, my Sunday was so filled with fun watching these games. We're going to talk about how the Steelers are in huge trouble. We're going to talk about we're going to divert and talk about baseball for a second. The Cleveland Indians are talking about changing their name. We're going to talk about my weekend gambling recap, which is always pretty interesting. Or the Eagles are smart, or are the Eagles stupid? And then we're going to have Lance Fernandez join us. He's formerly a writer for Fox Sports, now works for the people over at What's on Sports, and he'll be telling us about 6 coaches that need to go. And then we'll wrap up the show by diving into our mailbag and getting questions from our viewers and our readers, and making sure that we can answer those questions the best that we can. Now, the very first thing that I want to talk about is a subject that's near and dear to my heart, and it's one of those subjects that may upset some people that I know. But the reality of it is, and I always tell you on every show because I like to be transparent, I am a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. I'm a fan of the team, have been for a long time. I was born and raised just outside of Pittsburgh. I lived there until I was about 19 years old, and then I moved to Miami. But I always kept the team as my team. I'm just one of those people. I would know almost everything there is to know about the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm a good fan. I'm a loyal fan. But most importantly, I am an honest fan. And as an honest fan, and as a sports analyst, as a data analyst, which is what I do for a living right now, I analyze sports data. I have to be honest and say that the Steelers are in enormous trouble. And it's not just about the numbers. It's really not. It's about, if you watch the Steelers play, and they played last night against the Buffalo Bills in what was, in my opinion, an embarrassing performance front to back, everybody included. We're talking about from the coaching to the players. It was just really, really, really bad. And I mean, I don't know where to start, but I think I'll start with the fact that the Steelers have maybe, well, at one time, were considered one of the most talented rosters of wide receivers in the entire NFL, and have somehow figured out a way to become an absolutely terrible roster of NFL players. It is absolutely terrible the way their wide receivers and their tight ends catch the ball right now. And as Mike Tomlin says, if it is your job to catch the ball and you can't catch the ball, we may need to find somebody else who can do it. Now, number 1 and number 2 on this list, Eric Ebron, who was legendary for going through periods of the season with these huge amounts of drop. And then, of course, Deontay Johnson, who, if he could catch the ball, could be an Antonio Brown type of player. But Deontay Johnson deserves an episode all by himself, because I think a lot of what goes on with that guy goes on inside his head. Deontay Johnson is not an NFL caliber wide receiver on the mental level yet. He makes far too many mistakes. He gives up on balls. He drops balls that are right in his hands. At this point, that kid's got to sit. But that's just the beginning of the problems. The offense has become incredibly predictable. They ended up the first half by throwing a pick 6 because that cornerback knew the formation, knew the route combination, jumped the route on a 2-step drop. If you're being intercepted on a 2-step drop when you're getting rid of the ball in 2 seconds, it's because the cornerback knew where the ball was going. And it's really just that simple. It's really just that simple. That cornerback knew where that ball was going, made the play, and it didn't make a difference where Ben was going to throw that ball. That ball was going to be picked off, and that ball was going to go for 7, or at least 6, and then the extra point. So, which they missed, actually, so only 6. So that's the beginning of the problems on offense. And on defense, you're looking at a team that carries 3 first-round Pro Bowl caliber linebackers in their roster, 2 of which are now hurt and out. Another of which, who's really kind of like a leader, Vince Williams, hard hitter, knows the defense, was out also with COVID. I'm not sure if he had COVID or maybe he was just, I have to look at it. Maybe he was just on the COVID reserve list, but I think he actually had COVID. But they played the entire night last night with none with one of their starting linebackers, TJ Watt, who was fairly ineffective. TJ made a couple okay plays, but without Bud Dupree on the other side to really pair up and do those combo plays those guys are so good at, those splash plays where they really put the pressure on the quarterback, they were able to get pressure on the quarterback. Buffalo did not look comfortable as Josh backed up into the pocket. He did not look like a comfortable quarterback, but I got to tell you, he was able to stay in that pocket. That kid showed me a lot last night, and there were some huge wide receivers there were huge wide receiver gaps that were open. There were plenty of space for guys like Stephon Diggs to move. Zone coverage did not work last night. They did not make the adjustments. Buffalo knew what they were going to do on offense. Buffalo knew what they were going to do on defense. The Steelers have become far too predictable, and if they don't fix this problem, they've got a tough road of games coming up here. Cincinnati should be an easy game. It should be an easy game. And then you're looking at Indianapolis, and then you're looking at Cleveland, I believe, to end the season. And those are tough games. And Cleveland, if Cleveland wins up until, wins out until that last game of the year, and they play Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh just stays where they're at, that could be a game that decides the division. So Pittsburgh can go from an undefeated team to a team struggling to actually win their own division. And that's not where they want to be. So right now, in my opinion, the Pittsburgh Steelers are in big trouble. Now, we usually stick to football because it's a football show. It's a football time of year. But the NBA is coming up, so we're going to be talking about a lot of hot topics like that. There's one topic that I want to talk about, and I don't know if this is actually sports related. I try to stick to only sports for the show, but the Cleveland Indians are changing their name. Now, I don't know what this is about because in my opinion, I'm still a little irritated that the Washington Redskins changed their name, but I do understand it. I do understand that the term Redskin could be considered insulting. I wouldn't want to be called brown skin because I'm Italian or whatever you would call us. So I can see where Redskins could be offensive. Now, I find it a little bit off-putting as a sports fan that I've had to learn a new name, but I'll get over that. It'll pass. I understand that they had to change their name. I think calling them the Washington football team is stupid. I think you've got probably a multi-million-dollar marketing company that helps the Washington Redskins promote themselves, and no one can think of a name. And so they stuck with the Washington football team, which is quite honestly pretty ridiculous. Soccer teams are called football clubs, FC. But American football teams, they're called football teams, but we don't refer to them as the Washington football team. That's just crazy, lazy, in my opinion. And now the Cleveland Indians have jumped on board with this. And I think to myself, why would you do this? Why would you do something like this? Why are you going out and changing your name? Well, I read an article the other day where someone said, well, calling them the Cleveland Indians is racist. Well, listen, I don't think calling somebody a Cleveland Indian is a racist thing. I think that's just, it's almost like an honorable thing. Like, hey, this area was propagated by a lot of Indians at one point. The population of this area was Indian. So we call ourselves the Cleveland Indians in honor of these tribes that actually settled these areas. I don't understand how that is considered to be a racist term. But the Cleveland Indians are now going out and going to change their name. Not because somebody asked them to, because they felt like they were left out of the party. So they're just going to go ahead and change their identity, their brand, because they felt like they were left out of the party. Woke culture has made its way into sports, and I really wish it would get the heck out, because I don't think anybody's complaining about the fact that the Cleveland Indians are called the Cleveland Indians. I don't think the term Indian is used in a derogatory fashion at all. And that's just my opinion. Now, some things I know about, some things I just talk about. Now, the Cleveland Indian thing was something that I just thought I'd mention because it bothered me a little bit. What I do want to tell you about is, I mentioned earlier that I'm a sports analyst, and really what I am is I'm a data sports analyst. That's what I do for a living. So I talked about sports trading systems. That's actually my website. It's actually what I do. I work for sports trading. I'm sorry, What's on Sports. That's like a little fun thing. They asked me to host a show. I happen to be pretty good at it, so I stuck around and did it. But sports trading systems is actually my website. And what I'm going to do today is something that I never do. I'm going to tell you about my weekend gambling and what I did. And these are the plays that I recommended to everybody that's on my service, because Sports Trading System is a service. You can sign up, you can get picks. So I have a $49 lead lock special that I'm running right now. And you can actually go on there and check out the lead locks for $49. I'll send you picks, and I won't stop until I give you 5 winners. So this is what I sent out this weekend. So I sent out these money line plays. I had the Miami Dolphins at plus 218. That was a loss. I had Tennessee at minus 335. That was a win. I had Indianapolis at minus 135. That was also a win. I was 2 for 3 in my money line plays. So you made money if you played it with me on the money line. And if you notice the way I balance everything, I don't take underdogs, all underdogs. I don't take all favorites. I don't take all even money. I balance it around. There's a reason that I do it. I got a book I wrote. You can go check it out. It's on sportstradingsystems.com. These are my underplays that I did this weekend. These are all verified by my members. I publish these 20 minutes after I send them out to my members. Once the games are started, I will publish these out so that everyone can see them. I'm sharing them with you on the show today so you can see what I recommended. There's actually another play that you can make if you want to play this tonight. I took Tennessee at Jacksonville with the under. That was a win. I took Detroit at Green Bay at the under. That was a win. And I recommended that tonight people take Baltimore at Cleveland under, and that will probably be another win. And this is all based off of several different computer algorithms that I've programmed along with a couple guys that work with me in the lab. And the computer picks all this stuff. So it's based off of my football knowledge. It's based off of back-tested historical data that we put in together. So it's kind of like my brain along with a bunch of information. And this is what it comes up with. And we're absolutely crushing football right now. Yesterday was a huge day for us. It looks like we're going to be 5 out of 6 once this Baltimore and Cleveland game comes in tonight. And I couldn't be any happier, to be honest. I couldn't be any happier. Things are going really, really good. I wanted to share with you a little bit about what we do over there. And I wanted to share with you my weekend because it was a great weekend. For those of you watching on YouTube and on Facebook, you can see that I put a stat up there so you guys can see them. Those are the real plays. If you get this information today, you get it before the Monday Night Football game. And we broadcast this show earlier, and then we cut the clips up. We put the clips everywhere. It's downloadable. The show's always ready to go Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We record at 10:30. We go live at 10:30. It's on the podcast networks by noon, no later than noon. I encourage you to download this stuff so that you guys can get this stuff and see what we're talking about here. This is good stuff. It's free information. If you can play it tonight, go with the under. Baltimore, Cleveland. I never give away free stuff. I want you guys to see how good this stuff works. I'm glad I was able to do it for you. Now, I want to talk about something else. You know, I'm not a huge Eagles fan. I mentioned before I grew up inside Pennsylvania. I'm not a huge Eagles fan. I didn't follow the Eagles a lot growing up, but I've always had a little bit of an admiration for the city of Philadelphia. In my mind, those are good fans. Now, they're a pain in the ass, but they remind me a lot of Pittsburgh fans in the fact that they're very demanding and they want winners. And I think that what the Eagles have done with Carson Wentz, Jalen Hurts, has been brilliant. They took a tremendous amount of flack, tremendous amount of criticism by taking Jalen Hurts in the second round. Why would you do that with a franchise quarterback like Carson Wentz? Why would you put your team in that type of jeopardy by creating that type of controversy? Why would you ever go against this guy who you paid, who you signed a contract with for $100 million? Why would you ever do that? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to tell you exactly why they did that. If you haven't figured it out yet, they did it because they knew something. They knew something. And they knew that Carson Wentz was in trouble. They knew that after they signed that contract, they had buyer's remorse. And they said to themselves, we've got to fix what we've done. And how else can we fix it than to find a quarterback like Jalen Hurts, a guy who's got potential, a guy who we can sit for the first 9 or 10 games, because we've got to give Carson Wentz the opportunity to hang himself. We've got to give him the opportunity to prove himself or hang himself, actually. And if Carson can't do it in 10 games, then we can throw Jalen Hurts out there, and he might be our quarterback of the future. But we've got to make that up. We've got to make that dive right now. We've got to do that right now. And then what we've got to do is we've got to make sure that everybody in the media doesn't get it. Keep it a mystery. Let him think he's going to be Taysom Hill. He's going to be our guy off the bench. That's what they're doing. That's what they did. They pulled the wool over everybody because they knew what they were doing and nobody got it. Nobody was able to figure it out. But you know what? The Philadelphia Eagles deserve a round of applause because Jalen Hurts started yesterday, and that kid looked fantastic. He looked like a rookie quarterback that was allowed to sit there for 10 games and marinate, see the field a little bit here and there. He looked like a rookie quarterback who took to coaching very well. He looked like the kind of explosive athlete that you thought he was going to be coming out of Oklahoma. He looked like the guy that Nick Saban thought was going to lead him to a national championship and actually led them to a national championship game before Tua took his place at halftime. He looked like that guy. And he really looked after one game. I grant you, I say, after one game, he really looked like he can be the future of the Philadelphia Eagles. That's right. And I'm sure you didn't hear it here first, because the national media is really big on that one game and the guy's going to be a star moment. But that kid looked good yesterday. So I'm telling you the angle that I see. I'm looking at the Philadelphia Eagles as a business. And I'm saying that those guys played this so well in the media that nobody knew what was going on, but the Eagles knew. So were the Eagles dumb for drafting Jalen Hurts, or were they brilliant? I think it was the best move in the draft so far. When you look at everything, that may have been the best move in the entire draft, because your franchise quarterback just imploded over the course of the first 11 games of this year, and you were ready with another guy that took the field and didn't just take the field yesterday and look good. He beat the team that I thought was the best team in football and did so convincingly. He looked really good. Ran for 100 yards, was able to move the ball through the air, was able to make the reads, was really good at using his eyes for a rookie quarterback, was really good at using his eyes to move the safeties around. I was really, really impressed with that. Jalen Hurts very well could be a superstar in this league. Philadelphia Eagles deserve a round of applause for that. Do I have a button for that? Nope, that's not it. That's it. There you go. Round of applause. Okay. Anyway, big show coming up. I'm going to dip into the mailbag a little later. For those of you that would like to actually, drop us an email and ask us some questions, we'd be glad to answer them. You can go over to whatsonsports.com, look for the mailbag, and go ahead and send your questions in to us today. Now, we do have a very special guest coming on. Our next guest is one of the head writers over at whatsonsports.com. He used to work for the people over at Fox Sports, and now he's with us today. His name is Lance Fernandez. Lance is going to come on and talk to us about 6 coaches that actually very well could be fired by the end of this year. Lance, how you doing, buddy?
Doing awesome, John, as always. I hope you had a great weekend.
I had a fantastic weekend. I don't know if you saw that, but I won a bunch of money. I made all my clients super happy, and I had a great time. And, of course, I watched a ton of football, and I can't wait to hear what you've got to say. There are 6 coaches that you think need to go right away. I want to hear about these guys.
Okay, first things first. This is the surest option that I would have from all of the 6. No question, Adam Gase has to go. After squandering your first 12 games, and then you let go of your defensive coordinator after that dud against the Raiders. And now all you had to do was do better on offense, because the defense brought the energy against the Seahawks to some extent. But the offense still did not respond, and that ultimately falls into the hands of Adam Gase. So after this season, or maybe after this game, he really has to go.
Yeah, if you watched that game at all yesterday, and I did, because honestly, I made no predictions. I really felt like the Jets, if they were going to win a game, yesterday could have been the day to go in and surprise the Seahawks. New defensive coordinator, maybe some new strategies. Seahawks aren't ready. I thought they really had an opportunity. Sam Darnold looks worse and worse and worse. That has to fall on Adam Gase. So even if you're a completely defeated team, which they obviously are at this point, you have to think to yourself, if Gase could make Darnold look better, maybe that would save his job. But I just don't see it happening. So I have to agree, Adam Gase has got to go. I'm surprised he's made it this long, to be honest with you. Who's next on your list?
Okay, next on my list, and this might be a shocker because of all the things that he did with the squad. It's Doug Peterson of the Philadelphia Eagles. Remember, he won a championship with the Eagles in 2018 when Carson Wentz went down, and then Nick Foles took over, and then won 2 division championships with the Eagles. But this year, he hasn't shown any adjustments, and ultimately, if you know that your quarterback is struggling, then as a coach, you should have some adjustments to bring his game out once again, or to let him gain his confidence once again. But for some reason, after 12 games, Doug Peterson hasn't made any adjustments, and that's why ultimately it was Jalen Hurts' time already for Philadelphia, and Carson Wentz has to sit on the bench. But ultimately, I feel like Peterson will not be the coach that will unlock the potential of Jalen Hurts moving forward as one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. So he has to go as well.
Yeah, I'd hate to see that happen, not because I have a vested interest in his job being held or anything, but you look at a guy like Jalen Hurts, who actually looked pretty good yesterday. He's just learning that offense. You would like to think that maybe if he stuck around for a while, he could develop in that offense. The worst thing you want for a young quarterback is to be jumping back and forth between offenses while he's trying to become something. But I guess it will depend on where Philadelphia sees their value. If they see the value in bringing somebody in that can bring Wentz back to what he was, or if they see the value in trying to turn Jalen Hurts into a superstar, I guess that's where you'll see where Peterson goes. Who's next on your list?
Okay, next on my list, another coach that has struggled throughout the season, and partly because of ownership, because his owner doesn't want to spend much money. It's Doug Marrone. But remember that just a year or two ago, they were in the AFC Championship game. And since then, he hasn't done anything for the squad. It has been a nosedive. It has been a downfall since. And
100%.
now that they don't have any clarity when it comes to quarterback and for any other part of the offense for that matter, aside from DJ Chark. And I guess it's time for Doug Marrone to find other opportunities elsewhere.
Yeah, that is a terrible culture there. I mean, that is, and Marrone has to take a lot of the responsibility there. Players don't want to stay. Players don't want to talk about a second contract. There is no real face of that franchise who has stuck around to say, wow, I really want to be a part of the Jacksonville Jaguars. That is a cultural issue that has to come from the front office, down through the coaches, through all the assistant coaches, right through the players. I cannot agree with that one more. Marrone's got to go. You got, three more guys on your list, right? Three more coaches that need to go in the NFL.
Okay, fourth on the list, and this guy, I believe, was saved with their team's victory here in Week 14, and we're talking about Matt Nagy. So the Bears started strong. They were 5-1, and then eventually they went 1-5. So a reversal of fortunes. It's the reversal of what happened to the Vikings. But for some reason, to some extent, his job was saved after the win in Week 14. But if it doesn't do well in the next 3 weeks, especially now that they still have a fighting shot in that seventh and last playoff spot in the NFC, then he really has to go because he has been there for so long. He did win some division titles. He did his good early in his coaching stint in Chicago. But just like Doug Marrone, it has been a nosedive. It has been a downfall ever since for Matt Nagy in Chicago.
Yeah, I'd say the biggest difference between what Marrone has to work with in Jacksonville and what Nagy has to work with in Chicago there's a lot more talent in Chicago than there is in Jacksonville. Maybe a little more talent. I don't want to say a lot. He's had a lot of trouble at the quarterback position. I think he was stuck with Trubisky, who was not his first choice, who has been somebody who's not been happy with for a while, but he's kind of been stuck with him. Trubisky looked fantastic yesterday. I don't know what happened. I don't know if he took his vitamins or he got a COVID vaccine or something, but that guy looked like a completely different quarterback yesterday. At one point, I think he was 13 for 14. Look, for what Nagy has to work with, being 5-1 was a shock to start the season. But the nosedive they took was pretty much unacceptable. That should be a 500 team. I think if they end up 500, if they end up with a winning record, I find it hard to believe he'll go. But I can see where you're going. If the nosedive were to have continued, maybe he would go. Who's next on your list?
Okay, this is a no-brainer, and it is Anthony Lynn of the Los Angeles Chargers. Wow. So he did have 2 winning seasons in his first 2 seasons with the Chargers, but since then, it has been losing records. And given now that he has a talented roster with Justin Herbert at quarterback and the likes of Keenan Allen at the receiver positions, he should have done more with what he has in the roster. Unfortunately, he hasn't done much. He only has 4 wins to show for this season. And I guess it's just not the perfect fit for the Chargers moving forward.
Look, if you watch any Charger games, and I've watched a few because I'm actually a fan of Herbert, and I really like the way he plays, and I do think San Diego's an exciting team to watch at some points. They've had a tremendous amount of injuries. They lost a couple really key players on the defensive side of the football before the season even started, and it's been tough for them to put it back together for them. It's a young team, and I if you watch them, they've been very, very competitive in most of their games. So I'd be shocked if he goes, actually. You're right. He's had a couple winning seasons. This was kind of a rebuild year for them. They didn't expect much, just the first year without Phillip Rivers in 16 years. So I don't think they expected much. I think they got pretty much what they expected, but they've been competitive. They took the Chiefs to overtime. I don't know, man. I don't know about that one. I think you and the rest of the staff at What's on Sports are really convinced there's going to be a lot of turnover this year. I'm not quite so convinced, actually. I'm not quite so convinced. But I want to hear your last guy. Who's last on your list?
Okay, so the last but not the least is Mike Zimmer for the Minnesota Vikings.
Ooh.
So he's been there since 2014, won 2 division titles, and essentially his stint in Minnesota is just up and down. One year it's good, next year it's terrible, and then it's like a roller coaster ride for Zimmer, especially now that they started the season 1-6 and then won their next 5 to go in 500. But they've just lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and who knows how many games will they eventually win this season. But for all the patience that Minnesota has had, I guess Mike Zimmer's time is up in Minnesota.
So Mike Zimmer is one of those coaches, and I have this pet peeve. When you're hired as a defensive coordinator and made into a head coach, and you work somewhere and your defense isn't very good, I start to question what kind of a coach you really are. Like, that is your identity. You're hired as an offensive coordinator. Like Brian Billick years ago was hired as the offensive coordinator the head coach for Baltimore. He was offensive coordinator in Minnesota. He had that fantastic offense with Dante Culpepper, Randy Moss, Chris Carter. He got a lot of credit for how good that team was. Got the job in Baltimore, ended up doing really well in Baltimore, but only because he had a fantastic defense. He could never make the offense work there, which makes me question how good of an offensive mind was he? He got the job based on the fact that he was an offensive mind. Bringing us to Zimmer. Zimmer's always been known as that defensive wizard. He goes to Minnesota, puts together pretty much mediocre defenses. He's being saved by Kirk Cousins, which is very bizarre, and a fantastic run game of Dalvin Cook, who seems to be untackleable at some points. So I could actually see that one happening. I could see Zimmer being replaced and maybe Minnesota going and saying, you know what? We've got the offensive weapons. Let's load up with an offensive coach. Let's bring in an Eric Bieniemy and really make this offense really run. So I can really see that happening. Lance, I love the work that you did. That was fantastic. I love having you on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, his name is Lance Fernandez, one of the head writers over at whatsonsports.com. What are you writing about today? Anything good over there we should go check out?
So we're writing about Andy Ruiz is still in the head of Anthony Joshua, even though Joshua won against Kubrat Pulev. And of course, an extended version of this article, coaches that have to go. Awesome.
Lance, thanks for coming on the show. It's always great to have you.
You could bet on it, John.
I could bet on it. I love how you said that. Because I could bet on it. I could pretty much bet on anything. All right, the name of the website is whatsonsports.com. We invite you to go over and check it out. Also want to remind you that this show is being brought to you by our friends at Sports Trading Systems. For those of you that want to learn how to trade sports like other people trade stocks, there's money in it. You can make yourself a good living. Go over to sportstradingsystems.com and learn all the secrets. There's some free literature you can check out. Go into the free section, download that stuff so you can learn more. And there's all sorts of really good stuff, including a special right now, $49 for the lead lock picks, which are 5 winners, guaranteed 5 winners. If you'd have gone this weekend, you'd have got 5 out of 6 from the people over at Sports Trading Systems. We invite you to go over and check out the website right now. It's sportstradingsystems.com. Before we go any further and before we end the show, I have a special segment that we're doing. I invited people to go over to our website at What's on Sports and to send us in your questions. Anything you wanted to know after the football weekend, and I would answer it to the best of my ability. For those of you that watch the show and listen to the show all the time, I'm sure these questions will probably be pretty good. Let's start with our first one. Does Taysom Hill remain the starter for the Saints when Drew Brees comes back healthy? And the answer to that would be an emphatic, absolutely, positively no. Look, Drew Brees is a Hall of Fame quarterback who is not what he used to be, but he is still the leader of that team. He is still the heart and soul of that team and what makes that team go. And to me, Taysom Hill's got a future as a quarterback in the NFL. But right now, if you could have a Drew Brees and you could have a Taysom Hill doing what used to be Taysom Hill things, playing tight end, playing wide receiver, playing running back, jumping in a quarterback every once in a while, running option plays. If you can have that, you have a dimension that no other team in the NFL is able to have. You have the ultimate gadget play that you can use all the time. I do not think there's any way possible that Taysom Hill remains the starter whenever Drew Brees comes back, just for that reason. Because Taysom Hill as a gadget is far more powerful, in my opinion, at this time in his career than Taysom Hill as an actual quarterback. So let's go to our next question. Aside from the other AFC North teams, the Steelers haven't beaten a team with a winning record except for the Titans. Are they even a top 3 team in the AFC right now? Well, look, I started off the show by being very, very hard on the Steelers, and I'm not going to change that. But I am going to correct whoever wrote this. The Steelers beat the Cleveland Browns, I think, 35-3. The Cleveland Browns have a winning record. The Steelers beat the Ravens when they had a winning record. So at the time, they have beat other teams with winning records. You can also look at our friends, the Kansas City Chiefs, and say the Chiefs have only beaten 2 or 3 teams with winning records. This is just the way it is. Teams don't get to play 25 other teams with winning records. Now, the Steelers have a little bit to show us here because they did just lose to Baltimore. They get almost a bye week next week against Cincinnati to get right. And then they've got to play Indianapolis and they've got to play Cleveland. 2 more teams with winning records. 2 more teams that should make the playoffs. So I think we're going to learn a lot about the Steelers and who they are going forward. Now, are they a top 3 team in the NFL? I don't know about that. But are they a top 3 team in the AFC? I would say yes. I would say that's still yes. They still have the talent to do that. Now, keep in mind that last night when they played the Buffalo Bills, the Steelers were shorthanded. Now, I'm not making excuses for them, but they're without 3 of their starting linebackers. They were without a starting cornerback. So they were shorthanded 4 starters off the defensive side. It showed in the way they played. The offense has become predictable, and they've been riddled with drops. And it showed in the way that they played yesterday. So they can get right. They can change things and get right. But it's got to happen now, and they can still be a top 3 team. In my opinion, right now, it's still them in Kansas City. Those are the teams that are going to be the ones you have to really worry about when you get to the playoffs. Now, let's go to our last question. And this one is near and dear to my heart. So I'll give you a little background. A couple weeks ago on the show, I said, listen, I think the Kansas City Chiefs are overrated by the media because the Chiefs are talked about by the media as if they're unbeatable, as if they're a flawless team, and they're not. In my opinion, the New Orleans Saints, who just got crushed over the weekend, are the only complete team I see right now. The only team that on all 3 phases of football are playing at a high level. Now, I would have said that about the Steelers 6 weeks ago. It's no longer true. And after yesterday, I'm not sure I would say it about the Saints, because the Saints got surprised by a Jalen Hurts quarterback. But at the same time, this question is, John, are you now willing to admit that the Chiefs are the best team in football? And the answer to that would be no. I am willing to admit that the Chiefs have the best record in football, because it's undeniable. They have the best record in football. Are they the best team in football? I would say no. They didn't win the game yesterday in Miami. They didn't lose the game, but Miami gave them that game. Miami had 3 different penalties against them for an illegal man downfield. I mean, that's just how sloppy the Miami Dolphins were. They weren't screen passes. Not one of them was a screen pass. They had 3 different times. 3 different times this happened. So you're asking me a question. Are they the best thing? Are they the best team in football? And I say to you, their record says they are. But if you watch them play, the Kansas City Chiefs are among the better teams. Patrick Mahomes was not good yesterday. He just wasn't. And I don't care how you want to slice it. Patrick Mahomes was just not good yesterday. He was just not. He looked rattled. He looked bad. He took a 30-yard sack. I watched the whole game. I thought to myself, what is this guy doing? This is the best quarterback in football? Now, granted, He threw 2 interceptions. He took a 30-yard sack. He also runs around and looks like an actual character on the Madden game. I mean, the way he throws angles of the football and the things he does to get guys open and the time he buys himself by running around, spectacular. He has moments of absolute, pure, and total greatness. But he also threw 2 interceptions and took a 30-yard sack. The Dolphins gave them that game yesterday. That game was there for the Miami Dolphins to take. If you watch the first quarter of that game, you had to think to yourself, oh, man, Chiefs are in trouble. Chiefs are in trouble. If they keep playing the way they're playing and the Dolphins keep playing the way they're playing, the Chiefs are in trouble. But what happened was the Dolphins stopped playing that way. The Dolphins started making mental mistakes. The Dolphins started doing stupid things. The Dolphins stopped blocking, so Tua was under a lot of pressure. They couldn't run the ball anymore. Like, there were a lot of things that the Miami Dolphins did that put themselves in that position. But if they would have kept the pedal down, if they would have kept it down, there's no doubt in my mind that Patrick Mahomes was rattled. There's no doubt in my mind that the Miami Dolphins would have beat the Kansas City Chiefs. And I've said this all along. If the Miami Dolphins make it to the playoffs, and they're going to, if the Miami Dolphins make it to the playoffs, and they are going to, that's a scary team because that team just needs to get the right rhythm. They've got a great secondary. They've got a young quarterback who can move around, and they've got decent wide receivers. They've got decent tight end. Their offensive line's not bad. That's a team, if they get to the playoffs, could be scary. If I was the Chiefs, I wouldn't want to play them again. I'll tell you that. All right. Thank you guys so much for participating. This has been a great show. Had a ton of fun. A ton of fun. If you watched it on any of our social media platforms, you can go check us out. We're available on all podcast platforms where you can download the show and you can carry it around in your pocket, listen to us when you're at the gym. We try to give you fun, inspiring, exciting news and sports information Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays right here on our live channels on YouTube and Facebook. And, of course, like I said, download it on all of your favorite podcast platforms. My name is John Todora. I have been your host, and I've had a blast entertaining the heck out of you guys. We'll see you real soon over at whatsonsports.com.